My 2025 NFL draft grades continue where I grade every pick for every team, this time the NFC East. And we're going to start this division with the Dallas Cowboys. And overall, I really like this draft. I think it was a pretty strong draft on the whole. Now, as you can see on the screen next to me, I did not like the Tyler Booker selection. Now, I do like Tyler Booker's tape. He's a mauler. He's a rock in the middle of the offensive line. He's 6'3", 315 pounds, really strong hands to offset the defensive lineman's attack. Great anchor in both the pass and the run game. And it's as simple as mass moves mass to some degree, right, with Tyler Booker. Like, he is massive and he is really powerful and he's good at creating holes in the run game. If you look at Jalen Milroe's tape, they're all littered with Tyler Booker creating avenues for him to run down. Now, Tyler Booker isn't a fit for every scheme, which is why I had him ranked 47 on my big board. I'm not huge on him as a prospect, but obviously he doesn't get drafted to a team which doesn't suit his skill set. He's not going to get drafted to a zone run heavy team like, say, the Dolphins, because he's not that kind of player. But what I am going to knock Tyler Booker for here are the fact that his testing numbers were historically bad. And you can see that on tape to a degree. Like, he really does struggle to move, frankly. Like, he's not a quick mover. You can't expect him to be at 6'3", 315 pounds. And there's very few good offensive linemen in the league with those sorts of testing numbers. And so for me, taking him at 12 is a bit rich. It's a bit risky, I think, taking him at 12. I wouldn't have liked it if, say, the Texans took him at 25. So taking him at 12 was a reach. Now, I appreciate that for the Cowboys, a team that has seen its most success in recent years, not including when they were winning Super Bowls in the 90s, but in recent years, by having a dominant offensive line. And I think recently they've kind of deviated from that. There have been a few players that haven't quite been as good as you'd like them to be. A few players have retired now as well from that old Cowboys offensive line of 5, 6, 7 years ago. So I like that the Cowboys are trying to reinvest in that, and I think doing that does make sense where this team is at the moment. But I do think that taking Tyler Booker at 12 is a reach. However, the Cowboys do redeem themselves with Donovan Ezeraku. I loved this pick, gets an A+ from me. I think he is the perfect edge to opposite Micah Parsons. He was my 24th ranked prospect, so getting him at 44 is a steal in my books, and that's why it gets an A+. To get an A+, it has to be a steal. An A is a great pick. A+ is a great pick at fantastic value. And I think Ezeraku at 44 is exactly that. He's a refined pass rusher, got a great bag of pass rush moves, really understands the nuance of the pass rushing position off the edge. And he doesn't have that power profile. He has a limited power profile, which did for me knock his evaluation. If he had even, just a smidge more power to his game, I would have put him as my edge 2 behind Abdul Carter. I couldn't do that because he doesn't have that power profile. And I think in the NFL, you need to have more than what Ezeraku has to be that edge 1. But for the Cowboys, he's not going to be that edge 1. He's going to be the Robin to Micah Parsons' Batman. And I think that is a perfect position for him to succeed in. He can kind of clean up any pressures that Micah Parsons creates, which is going to be a hell of a lot of times every single game. I think he's going to stumble into 6 sacks in his rookie year, be kind of an outside betting choice for maybe a defensive rookie of the year runner because of that teammate that he's playing opposite and because of him kind of stumbling into production. And I think he's really good. And I think this was a great pick from the Cowboys, who have lost talent over their defensive line, lost DeMarcus Lawrence. Now, Ezeraku's not a like-for-like replacement by any means in that regard. But you do need to have, I think, as we saw kind of with the Lions before Aiden Hutchinson got injured, you do need to have, for as good as Micah Parsons is, for as good as Myles Garrett is, for as good as TJ Watt is, you do need to have, I think, someone that can come up and still create pressures in their own right, absolutely, but can take advantage of all of the resources that have to get sent towards blocking a player of that caliber like Micah Parsons. So I think this is a fantastic pick. And the Cowboys follow that up with another fantastic pick, Savon Ravel. I know it looks like it should be pronounced Siobhan Ravel, but I have it on pretty decent authority that it's Savon Ravel. And he fell due to injury, obviously, but he was my 28th ranked player. So getting him at 76 was one of the better picks of the draft, I think. He is physical, he's athletic, he's a press man corner, got that dog mentality. He plays a little bit too fast and loose sometimes, but I really like his potential to develop into a full-time starting cornerback. I know they've got Deron Bland, I know they've got Trayvon Diggs, but you never know what's going to happen with those guys kind of going forward. And I think that having Revel there is a really good backup option in case of injury or in case of drop in play, or, if in 1-2 years' time they end up leaving the team. Now, another pick that I want to highlight is Jaden Blue, the running back from Texas, and the Cowboys got him in the 5th round, and that is just a great place to get Jaden Blue. I saw him as a Travion Henderson kind of consolation prize. If you couldn't get Henderson in the second, Jaden Blue on day 3 is kind of the next best thing in that kind of mold of running back. This guy's got blazing top speed, ran a 4.38 40. He just burns angles from safeties in the blink of an eye. He just runs away from pursuing defenders with ease. He just simply runs around guys, right? He's that quick, he runs around guys. And I think Jaden Blue is a really nice complementary speed back. And he's fantastic as a pass catcher from the backfield. Get this guy running a Texas route and he's going to produce. He had 385 receiving yards in Texas this year. And he's going to be with Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders. And those two guys don't have the same profile as Blue, which is good. It means that he can carve out that role as that, like I said, complementary speed back, maybe that explosive play threat. And I think because neither of those guys offer what Blue can, at the moment he's still quite raw. He's got a real problem with fumbles, and needs to clean that up on a really limited sample size as well. He's never really had that much carries at Texas. I'm quite surprised he even came out in the draft this year. But if he can, take those practice reps, not fumble the ball, which is really important for a young running back, because you don't get on the field if you're at risk of fumbling the ball. If he can kind of get that part out of his game, the fumbles out of his game, he can, I think, challenge for a pretty significant snap share in that backfield, I think. Javonte Williams has a history of injuries, never really been the same guy he was in that first year pre-injury, and Miles Sanders is a nice running back, but I don't think there's anything really keeping you tied to Miles Sanders particularly. So Jaden Blue, I think, is a really nice player. Now, the rest of the Cowboys picks were either good or great, bolstering the trenches, adding depth. So overall, I'm going to give this draft an A. Booker does hurt the overall grade, but fundamentally, I think the Cowboys got some really great players at fantastic value who I think are going to be impact players for them. Like, looking at this overall draft class now, I don't like the value of Booker, but I'm sure he's going to be very good. Ezraki's going to be really good. Revel's going to be really good. Blue's going to be really good. I like Cornelius and Toya as well. So there are some really good players in this draft class, and pains us all to admit it as non-Cowboys fans, but this was a good draft. Next, we have the New York Giants, and a lot of your evaluation of this class is going to hinge on the Jaxson Dart pick, and I'm really torn on it, and I'll talk about it more in detail in just a second, but I think even if you don't like the Dart pick, I think we can all agree the rest of this draft class is great. Now, we start with Abdul Carter at 3 overall. Clearly, best player available with Hunter and Ward already off the board. They didn't reach for Sanders or another quarterback at 3. Thank God for that. And it's really good because this is a fantastic long-term move for this team, right? It was BPA, a fantastic player, but not at a position of need. They're gonna have Dexter Lawrence up the middle, one of the best interior pass rushers in the NFL now that Aaron Donald's retired. They've got Brian Burns off one edge, and now they're going to have Abdul Carter off the other side. That is going to be nightmare fuel for opposing offensive linemen and opposing quarterbacks to try and deal with week in, week out. It's one of the best defensive lines in the league, I would say. And I think by the end of the draft process, Abdul Carter was almost becoming a bit underrated. We all kind of had that moment towards, maybe what was that, January or February, when before he was being mocked to the Panthers at 8, suddenly shot up draft boards. Everyone was talking about him, his fantastic performance in the playoffs with one shoulder when he had 7 pressures, I think against Notre Dame it was. And then since then, that was kind of the peak of his kind of hype. And since then, it did die down a bit. But I think Abdul Carter is just such a fantastic player. And he's going to make an already good Giants defense and defensive line specifically even better. Now, Jaxson Dart was the second first-round pick for the Giants. And like I said, I'm torn on this pick. It was a reach by my board, right? Jaxson Dart was 59 on my board. But it's a quarterback-driven league, and a trade up for a quarterback, I'm not going to knock it the same way like I would for any other position, frankly, because if you do hit on a quarterback, it is so valuable. It is literally franchise transforming if you are able to do that. And really, the Giants didn't give up that much to trade up either. They gave up 2/3, wasn't even their early third. I think one of them was a compensatory pick. And I know Dart is a developmental guy and he needs to sit on the bench. He's a ball of clay, 21 years old. He's got a good arm. He's a good threat with his legs as well. He could be a very nice quarterback, which is why if he does become what we think he might become, this is a good pick. However, the nuance here, and again why I'm torn on this, is Joe Schoen and Brian Dable, the general manager and head coach, have a very short leash this year. The Giants are currently, by Vegas odds, slated to pick first overall. Now, I don't believe that's going to be the case, and I'll talk about that why when I go on to the other picks. But people are not very high on the Giants. Now, if the Giants do turn out to not be very good, I don't see a world in which a sinking head coach and general manager don't drag down the young, exciting quarterback with them and try and put him on the field to keep their jobs by turning around to the owners, the Maras, and saying, well, look, yeah, we may be not 9 wins, good grief. We may be 3-8 at the moment, but if we put in Jaxson Dart, well, then you've got to give us another season because he could show something and that might help us keep our jobs. Jaxson Dart should not start this year. He's nowhere near ready coming from the Ole Miss offense where there's lots of predetermined or half-field reads, and if his first read isn't open, he drops his eyes and looks to run, very Sam Howell-esque in that way. He needs to develop. He needs to learn. Hopefully Dable can teach Dart like he taught Josh Allen, nowhere near the same physical tools, and I'm not saying that Dart will become Josh Allen. If he does, then Dable is the quarterback whisperer. But that's kind of the hope with Dart, is that he doesn't play this year. But that is determined on how many games the Giants win, frankly. And really, what I'll kind of wrap up the Dart thought with here is that the Giants had to take a quarterback. They had to take a quarterback. I'm really glad they didn't take a swing at one at 3. That would have been an absolute disaster. And I think they got one. I got one of the better ones in this class. I'm glad it wasn't Sanders at 24. I think Dart is the better long-term option. So I'm going to give it a B. Now, Darius Alexander was drafted then in the third round? Yes, in the third round. And this is a classic case of make your strength stronger, right? Maybe the Giants have been looking at their division rivals, the Eagles, and said, you know what? That seems to be working for you. We're going to do that. And they added another really good pass rusher in Darius Alexander from Toledo. Now, yes, he's an older prospect, 25, probably why he fell so low. But I like Darius Alexander. I think it's fantastic value for where they got him as well. So I gave this pick. Did I give it an A+? I gave it just an A, actually. I must have had him just around that range where he went. But you then got Darius Alexander. You got Abdul Carter, you got Brian Burns, you got Dexter Lawrence on the defensive line. Then in the secondary, you've got Tyler Nubin, Deontay Banks, Javon Holland now in free agency, Drew Phillips and Drew Phillips. That's a really good, young, exciting, talented defense. And I think the reason why, I don't think the reason why the Giants will be picking first overall is because of this defense, frankly. I think the defense is looking really good on paper. They're young, yes, and it takes a time maybe for them to kind of all come together. But fundamentally, I think it's a really good defensive unit. I think Malik Neighbors is good enough by himself for 3 wins. And then if you can get something out of Russ, the offensive line's okay. I mean, they added Bo as well, the guard from Purdue, and he's going to push for a starting spot. He'll shore up the offensive line. He's going to kick Evan Neal even further down the depth chart, thank God. So we're looking at a Giants team which, needs another wide receiver next to Malik Neighbors. I do like Wandale Robinson. I do like Darius Slayton. Those guys are wide receiver 3s. So you are missing that wide receiver 2. I think you do have also the young tight end in Theo Johnson as well. He's quite an exciting player. Needs a bit more firepower. But speaking of firepower, actually, almost forgot, how could I? They also drafted Cam Scatterbu, the running back from Arizona. Now, this is a fantastic pick, fantastic player, fantastic value. This is the A+ that I was talking about. He is a bit of juice that this Giants offense is missing. Still needs a bit more at the wide receiver position, but adding Cam Scatterbu is that juice that they, at least in the backfield, that with Tyrone Tracy, a player that I like, was missing a little bit, I think. I think Tracy wasn't quite that kind of home run, splash play running back that you would hope for when you have your starting players out there. Now, he's going to be a really good 1-2 punch with Tyrone Tracy. Tracy kind of lacks that power profile. Scatterbu has that in droves, right? He runs nasty. He's going to make the whole team better. He's got aura, if I'm young enough just to say that word. And he's just a kind of almost like a force multiplier on offense, really. Like, I think he's the type of player that can create something out of nothing. So can Malik Neighbors. And if you're on a short yardage situation, say, 3rd and goal, or you're in the 4th quarter and you've got to keep a drive alive to get and convert on 3rd down, give it to Cam Scatterby. He can make something happen. He's a special player in that sense. He's got a big play threat, great mentality as well. So I think this overall, the rest of these Giants draft picks are also really good. So overall, this is a really solid draft from the Giants. I'm going to give it an A. I don't hate the Dart pick personally, so that does kind of save the grade. If you're a Dart doubter, which I know a lot of people are, then that's going to ding the grade, definitely drafting him in the first round. I get it. But I do think that fundamentally the Giants didn't give up that much to do so. They didn't give up a future first rounder. They gave up a 2 third-round picks. I think that's absolutely fine for a swing at quarterback. That's why it's a B. And even if Dart does flame out, right, even if that is a disaster, I still think we can look back at this draft in a few years' time and appreciate that it's a really good haul. And I think the Giants have got better as a team as a result. Next, we have the Philadelphia Eagles. And you know what? Maybe drafting really isn't that hard because Howie Roseman does it again. He makes it look so easy. And you know what? Other general managers should take note. Now, the draft class starts with Jihad Campbell, in my opinion, the clear best 3-down linebacker in this class. I had him at 13 on my big board. To get him at 31, steal, absolute steal. And Howie just has a classic formula. It is take the highest graded SEC defensive player that's fallen and laugh all the way to the bank. And why I love Campbell so much is that he ticks the 3 boxes that I look for when evaluating linebackers. Can you rush the passer? Yes. Can you make plays at the line of scrimmage? Yes. Can you drop into coverage? Yes. And as a result, I just think that this is a great fit and pick for the Eagles. We've seen what they were able to do with Zach Bourne, a defensive player of the year candidate, someone that was written off as a New Orleans Saints, kind of misunderstood there as a player. Nakobe Dean is injured, so he's going to fill in for Nakobe Dean. And it's just incredible how the Eagles managed to find not even replacement level players, because these players are fantastic. They managed to lose great players and just replace them with great players. It's just a masterclass in team building. And then we don't end there. And we have Andrew Makuba, the safety, my safety too, from Texas. I think he is the perfect replacement for Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, a really instinctual safety with great range, and I love him on this Eagles defense. He's going to be a bit of an unsung hero, I think. Obviously, Cooper DeJean and Quinion Mitchell already getting their flowers as those defensive players that were drafted last year. And then the rest of the draft class is just very good and great picks. Mel Mondon Jr., the linebacker. They also got Carl McCord in the 6th. Why not take a swing on a high level, on a high potential backup quarterback with a late round draft pick? The Eagles know better than anyone. You're only as good as your backup quarterback. That's how they discovered, that's how they won a Super Bowl, frankly, with Nick Foles after Carson Wentz got hurt. So I think it's a really good pick, right? A team's only as good as their backup quarterback, and Carl McCord, I think, has starting potential. Not that he's going to beat out Jalen Hurts, Eagles fans, don't worry, I'm not saying that. But with a quarterback like Jalen Hurts, who is a rushing threat, you never know what's going to happen injury-wise. And Carl McCord, I think, can come in, make some nice throws, steady the ship a little bit. Might, obviously we don't want that to happen too early, but that's the potential that I see with Carl McCord, definitely. Now, Drew Kendall, the center from Boston College, was the only pick I didn't really like. I think it was a reach, but again, knowing the Eagles, Jeff Stoutland University, he's going to be the next best Eagles offensive lineman in a few years' time, but fundamentally it was a reach for me at this point. Now, overall, I'm going to give this draft an A+. The Eagles won the Super Bowl last year. And the Super Bowl winners got better in this draft class. And that's not easy to do when you're picking late in the draft, right? You're picking at 32, you're picking at the back end of every round unless you trade up. And this is why good teams stay good, because of good drafting. Last year, they had Quinion Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, Jalix Hunt, all make plays in the Super Bowl to help them win it. Cooper DeJean with a pick 6, Jalix Hunt with multiple pressures, and I'm sure a few sacks in there as well. Who's it going to be this year, right? Is Jihad Campbell going to be the one to return a pick 6? Is it Makuba? Who knows? But it really is just a classic Howie Roseman, classic Eagles, A+ draft. Now, the Washington Commanders didn't have quite as strong a draft as the rest of their NFC East division rivals, but they had a really strong draft last year with Jaden Daniels. Now, yes, I come to you as a humble man, Washington fans. I gave Jaden Daniels a D last year. I'm holding my hands up. It was wrong. I got it wrong. you got me, right? Jaden Daniels is clearly a very talented, very exciting young player. Now, the reason why the Commanders, as you can see, have such few draft picks is because they did trade for Laramie Tunsil, which is why there's a lack of picks. They also added Deebo Samuel as well in free agency. So it's a smaller, less exciting draft class for the Commanders. And they start with Josh Connolly Jr., the tackle from Oregon. Really solid pick, getting a starting caliber offensive tackle at the back end of the first. Definition of a B pick, right? Exactly where I had Connolly going. He's, was warranted a late round draft pick. He's not, in the lines of a Will Campbell or an Amar Membu. Nothing flashy here. Cosme is also injured with his ACL tear, happened at the end of last season. Maybe you slide Josh Connolly in at guard and then see if you can kick him out to tackle in a year, 2 years. Who knows? But you want to invest in an offensive line while you have a young quarterback like Jaden Daniels, someone that did struggle with avoiding sacks at college, which is why I did knock him as a prospect. Now, if you look at his pressure to sack numbers in the NFL, it's night and day. And I think that's a massive reason as to why Daniels had so much more success than I and a few others were expecting Daniels to have in his first year, because he was not good at avoiding sacks in college and was fantastic at avoiding sacks in the NFL. And you want to keep that trend. You want to keep having Jaden Daniels being able to avoid those sacks. Now, he can do it himself with his legs, but it's going to be a lot easier for him if he doesn't have to worry about avoiding the sacks, and the sacks simply aren't a threat anyway. So I do like the addition of Josh Connolly Jr. Now, Trey Amos as their second round pick. I'm not a Trey Amos guy, but at 61, hell, I'm on board with that, absolutely. He's got great speed, great matching mirror ability, and he's a good cornerback prospect, just not a great one. And that's fine in the second round, but really the Commanders need all the help they can get out there, right? Our lads, weirdly, when I look at the Commanders depth chart, and Commanders fans, please do feel you can correct me in the comments, but he said, but our lad says that Sainra Still is playing left cornerback. Now, I don't know if that's just kind of like a funky way they've listed it, but Sainra Still is a fantastic nickel, and I'm surprised he's listed there. So that seems weird to me. And then I'm also not quite sure about Marshall and Lattimore either. He's quite unreliable with injuries at this point, and he didn't look great when he was healthy either. So ideally, right, you have a healthy Marshall and Lattimore at one spot, you have Trey Amos at the other, and then you got Sainra Still in the slot. That's looking a lot better, I think. That's what I think we're all in agreement, Commanders fans, is the best setup for them defensively. Maybe I'm missing a trick. Maybe Sainra Still is absolutely fantastic at left cornerback, but that's not what I saw when I watched his tape when he was coming out of Michigan last year. Fantastic player, loved him, gave that pick an A+, but left cornerback's interesting. Now, I don't love Jalen Lane in this wide receiver class, and Kay Madrano was a reach as well. He struggled with missing tackles, but the real gem of this class, I actually think, is Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, the running back from Arizona. This was a fantastic pick. I love this guy. He could only play one game in 2024 due to eligibility issues. He's been forgotten about in a really deep running back class. He's super creative. He's super elusive. He could be the Bucky Irving, I think, of this class. He sees holes where holes don't even exist yet. He can just create things out of a really muddied, rushing lane. He's fantastic. And when you're looking at the running backs on this roster, Brian Robinson, Austin Eckler, and Jeremy McNichols, I could see Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt carving out himself a pretty decent share of those snaps in that backfield. I mean, McNichols definitely, Eckler, he's injured, I believe, and no spring chicken. And Brian Robinson is more of a downhill kind of thumper. He's not that elusive. I really like Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt as a kind of change-up in that backfield. So overall, I'm going to give this draft class a B-. Not much can be done with so few picks and picking so much later in the draft, but the ironic thing with the Commanders is that whilst they struck gold with Jaden Daniels, the rest of the roster, it seems, isn't quite up to speed with the level of their quarterback, right? Jaden Daniels, if he continues to play that he showed last year, and as a Texans fan with CJ Stroud, unfortunately, I know that's not a guarantee, but if he does, well, then you're in your Super Bowl window. But the rest of the roster isn't really looking that strong, I don't think. So really, they had quite a lot of holes they needed to fill, and I think they did a good job in doing so with the few picks they had. So they did what they could with what they have. It's a B-. But what do you think about all of these draft classes? Let me know in the comments down below. Make sure you subscribe for more draft content. Make sure you like the video as well. Your support is greatly appreciated. But I've been your host, Tom Corbs. This has been Corbs NFL. We'll see you on the next Draft Grades video.